All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Bulluminati podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Bond. Joined alongside me, as always, Robert Steeg and Seth Varnadore. Hasn't even been that long since we last spoke. I think it was last week, right? The days are just kind of running together, I'll be honest. Yeah, it could have been last week or 2 weeks ago.
We got some news, though, at least. I mean, that's kind of we get together when the news needs us.
Yeah, exactly. When the bat signal comes up, we've got baseball stuff to go over. We got Georgina Cork being Georgina Cork again, and a bunch of football stuff to go over. Realignment talks, things that should have been that weren't, and we'll go from there. How have you guys been? How's the last week treated you guys?
Good. Nobody in my house is sick anymore. Knock on wood for the moment. So I haven't shown them the video of Steeg drinking mayonnaise and Coke, so maybe that would send them the other way. But for now, we're good.
Yeah, keep that on standby if you ever need it. Instead of calling the what are those the poison control people and they tell you what to ingest to like help you throw up, show them that video. It's easy.
Yeah. I think that's really what it boils down to. I've got a friend who's pregnant, and she calls it the two finger restart when she has to kind of get recalibrate. The fetus is kicking her ass, and she's got to do the two finger restart to jumpstart the system again. So that could help. Maybe I'll need to send that to her next time just to kind of help speed things along. But let's kind of jump into it. We've got a lot of stuff to kind of cover. Let's jump right into baseball. The MLB draft happened kind of over the weekend through Tuesday, and then we had the All-Star game. Lots of stuff. You guys pick. Do you guys want to go All-Star game first, or do you want to do MLB draft first? Do you want to do happy, kind of sad, or just happy?
Sort of happy, kind of sad, and happy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
All right, so happy, kind of sad. Shane Mcclanahan is the first ever former USF Bull to make the All-Star game, and he gets the start because he had a dazzling first half of the season. We talked about it on last week's podcast, and ERA under 2. Got kind of lit up in the first inning of the All-Star game. Gave up 2 runs, including a solo shot to Paul Goldschmidt of the St. Louis Cardinals. I think Ronald Acuna Jr. lit a double, and then he came around to score, settled down, finished with a strikeout, gave up the 2 runs, the only 2 runs the National League scored on Tuesday, and the American League won. So go good guys.
I think it was just a cerebral move on his part. They say Greg Maddux used to groove fastballs during spring training just to give guys a false sense of confidence. I'm sure he's doing the same thing for the World Series. Just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
It's called 3D chess.
Yeah. Read a book.
Losers.
But I mean, I gotta say it was pretty awesome seeing him be the All-Star starter after watching him kind of progress at USF, I'll be honest.
He was
in Dodger Stadium
on the mound. Like they showed him like basically rearing ready to go for the first pitch and everything like that. I don't think I've ever seen someone with a smile that big in a professional sporting game. I mean, the guy, he literally looked like he was about to just, go out there and have some fun. He let a few hang, but, nerves.
3D chess.
3D chess.
Kicked off the second half of the season on Friday. I think on the road, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what the second half brings for Shane. And, it was always great. It was great to see him out there he's a star. He's a star in the making, and he's one of our own. And we've got to hold on to those guys for dear life. Those kind of players only come around, once a generation or so. So it was really nice to kind of see him rewarded with that. But future stars in the making. The MLB draft also happened. 4 Bulls were drafted and 2 commits were drafted through the process as the MLB draft kind of gets back.
Oh,
Steve, take over.
It means I have to do it.
Our good friends is Bruin at McEwen made this nice graphic here of the 4 Bulls that were drafted. Steve, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so kind of who you would expect. So you're really your Friday, your Saturday starter, and your Sunday starter, and then your slugger on the diamond there with Carmine Lane. So Ryan Kirkering, no surprise there, getting drafted or being the first one drafted of the bunch. He got rattled a few times throughout the year, coming from the closer position as a true freshman into a rotation rotation pitching duty just due to Jack Jaziak going down with an injury. So pleased to see that. If you went to any baseball games this year, every time Kirk was pitching, there was at least 12 scouts in attendance. So again, no surprise that he was the first one taken off the board. Jack Jaziak, the next one taken, or not the next one. The next one by the Guardians. Again, was a solid starter for us last year. All this until injury looked like severe enough that going undrafted by any stretch of the imagination. Just late enough that I think he could still kind of ponder coming back for maybe a junior or sophomore year, depending on the eligibility standards. But nonetheless, pretty good when your Saturday or your Friday or Saturday starter gets drafted. Brad Lord, again, your Sunday starter, did pretty all right this year. Got rattled a few times though, but getting drafted shows a lot of potential for him. And then Carmine Lane, the only batting player to get drafted this year. A quick little trip down the turnpike over to get to Miami. Based off of the reactions by head coach Billy Moll, head manager, it sounds like Carmine is probably going to end up in the Marlins system. Obviously, being drafted in the 19th round, he's probably not going to be called up to the show just yet, but he'll probably end up in the Marlins system there for a little bit. Kirk will probably end up in the Philly system. Lord and Jaziak, pick your poison. They might or they might not. We'll see what happens there. And then two of the USF commits for baseball were drafted. Again, these are kind of like pick them if you want them. They can go to the show or they can go to, college and then still maintain their eligibility for a draft later. Round 11, the Orioles selected right-handed pitcher Zach Showalter from Wesley Chapel High School. And then a couple picks later, in the 11th round, the Reds selected South Kingston High School in Rhode Island, the right-handed pitcher Ben Broody. So pretty good sign for both of them. Again, we won't really know until workouts start whether they come to campus or not. Usually those past the 10th round guys will usually go back to college or get back into get into college ranks. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, overall pretty successful draft, I'd say, for USF. It's good to see Carmine get the recognition that he deserves and hopefully be able to ball out there. And then, guys that you want to return back to USF for hopefully a resurgent next season. You still get Drew Brutcher back. Ben Rosenblum, I think, is going to be able to come back. Or no, not Ben Rosenblum. Who is that? I should have had his name. Bobby Boser. They're coming back, so some sluggers, and all these guys are still working in the summer leagues and off-season leagues, so a lot of good potential there. Nate's still not back, and I can only fluff this for so long, so I guess we're going to move into the other hit ball stick sport, the world famous. Oh, is someone there, Seth?
Yes, hold on a second. Yeah, no, they're gone now. I'll just beat them off camera later.
Jesus Christ! Can't just do that. Yeah, and then switching gears, the other side of the baseball softball complex. Pretty good recognition out of USF today for arguably one of the best student athletes to come through the university, at least in this century. Georgina Korok gets the the pitching triple crown, becomes the first pitcher to basically lead the nation in wins, ERA, and strikeout. I feel like two of those kind of supersede each other because with wins and strikeouts, if you're winning a lot, you're probably striking out a lot too. Nate, welcome back. I covered baseball for you.
I appreciate it.
You look just befuddled right now.
Keep going, man. Pretend I'm not here.
I'll be right back.
You're good. But yeah, so like I was saying, great recognition of probably arguably one of the best student athletes to come through USF. Georgina Burke with pitching Triple Crown here. First off, kudos to the USF graphics team because that is a absolutely perfect photo.
Yeah, it's pretty top notch.
Don't know how deep into the stocks they had to go to try to find a picture of her kind of like being
or just like
that.
She doesn't seem like the kind of person who would just willingly do that. So it could, you know what, be hilarious if that was just like her normal picture, but someone else's hands.
It's Seth's hands, actually.
Like that would be pretty incredible. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about her often. I think she may be the best USF athlete to come through these parts in a very, very, very long time. Welcome back, Seth. Hey, buddy.
I'm back.
All right. All right. How about not much? Just kind of glowing. We're kind of figuring out if that's just like Georgina's face in someone else's hands, or they got Georgina to pose like that.
Looking at the bracelets, I would bet that's her.
You never know. I mean, John
looks like an athlete's bracelet.
I mean, it wasn't John Travolta, walking with the paint can in Saturday Night Fever. So, what are we to believe?
There's a lot of lies going on with John Travolta. Allegedly. Say that for legal purposes.
All right. That's enough of that. Let's get into the heart and the soul of the podcast here. Man, I really don't know which one's kind of the juiciest one to start with. Do we want to start with the thing that may end Steeg and I's relationship? Because if it wasn't the spring game streaming, it could be this.
Ooh, I don't know.
I think we'll start with that one so that we can end a little softer. Because I think we'll end on a better note than we did when the spring game podcast, where you and I screamed at each other for 3.5 hours when we finished recording.
Yeah. All right. That's fine. So USF transfer quarterback Gary Bohannon was named to the Davey O'Brien watch list on Tuesday morning, along with 34 other players. You'll see national champion Stetson Bennett, who somehow is still in the league. Malik Cunningham, who the Bulls will face. Former Central Florida quarterback Dylan Gabriel. BYU quarterback Jaron Hall, who the Bulls will face. SMU quarterback Tanner Mordecai, who the Bulls will face. Houston quarterback Clayton Tune, who the Bulls will face this year. USC quarterback Caleb Williams, who is a transfer. Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. And then South Carolina quarterback Spencer Rattler. Oregon quarterback Bo Nix. The list goes on and on. It's a pretty damn good list to be on.
Forgot the most important one, Nate.
Sean Clifford or Chase Bryce?
Oh, no, you forgot Will Levis. Or is it Levi's or Levis?
Levis.
I have competition now.
You do.
The most unhinged. Like mine was like unhinged. Like, but
you're not a quarterback.
He also eats bananas without peeling them.
What the fuck is wrong? I love him. I love this man.
He's like a shaved ape or something.
It doesn't make any sense. And this is supposed to be the leader of your team. Can you trust this man? I don't think so.
Poor decision maker.
Terrible decision maker. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, he at SEC Media Days, it's been talked about before. I think it was really discussed last year. He puts mayo in his coffee. Is it a regular occurrence or just like when he's feeling froggy?
I think he's not every day for him. Because the video kind of just skimmed through it, but like in his actual interview, he basically is just like every once in a while, I've heard of putting butter in coffee. That's like an old like blue collar work thing that truckers do.
There it is. Disgusting.
Kentucky, and I have been known to put mayonnaise in my coffee sometimes.
Sometimes.
And it's not even Duke's.
Yeah, it's not Duke. What the fuck?
That's like Miracle Whip. That's not even real mayo.
Also, shout out to whoever was taking that video for the SEC Media Days, because will flip out.
Will Levis,
Beautiful job.
University of Kentucky, and
Don't like.
Nope, don't like that. That's just disgusting. That is horrendous. If he was my QB1, I'd be really, really worried. But our potential QB1 is also Davey O'Brien watch list candidate, and he hasn't even played a snap in a green and gold unit. Well, this version of green and gold, and he's technically not even QB1 yet. So naturally, USF just didn't mention it at all yesterday, and the fan base, quite frankly, in my opinion, got into a tizzy because. And Steeg, hear me out on this. In late May and most of June, there really wasn't anything going on, and the fan base being uppity about that was just annoying. But then there was actual news that came out, like actual positive news for a team that is 2-10, 1-7 in conference. You're 3-18 over your last 21 games, and you get this small sliver of exciting news where you're, in the ranks of top 5 NFL draft pick potential, and you go silent, absolutely dead silent. And Steeg, I know you're going to prepare and say, hey, these transfer quarterbacks didn't get any mention, and I get it, but these other teams have much better publicity and have much further reach. And quite frankly, and unfortunate, completely unfortunate for at least Bo Nix in Oregon is a player died less than a week ago. So right. It's really, I think it would have been in poor taste for them to really truly say anything, and I completely get that.
Right.
And I mean, the tight end is Spencer. I can't remember his Spencer Hall. No, Spencer
Webb. I think
Spencer Webb. Yes, excuse me. He was going to be a key cog to their entire team. A tragic cliff jumping, cliff diving accident, and it wasn't appropriate. So I completely get that, and I know Spencer Rattler didn't have any, and there was one other, right? Caleb Williams didn't have it, but Caleb Williams did get mentioned for the Maxwell Award as well, and they did post something for that. So right. I'm just. It doesn't make much sense in the context of this is probably the only guy that's going to make a watch list this year outside of who's the best return. What's the best returner name for?
That would usually be like the best, like all around, not all around, like the multi-position. Yeah.
Okay.
So like back in
NCAA, it's just like best returner award or whatever. Like I don't think they got the rights to that award, so they just called it best returner. And Brian Petit will likely be named to that as he's one of 6 returning All-Americans this season. It's pretty easy. Like I get there's a lot going on. There's people on vacation. I completely get it, but. A retweet from the AAC mentioned it. The Davey O'Brien list just retweet that. You wished Latrell Williams a happy birthday. You did some other things. You hinted at the boxes that USF equipment's been kind of buried under. Like they were doing stuff yesterday, and it just Tuesday, and it seems just like a complete whiff.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that. I get where you're coming from. And it's just kind of piling on, but you're still wrong. But I get it.
Right. And I wanna make my position very clear about this, because I think it got a little convoluted when especially today as I've been tweeting about it. I'm in the camp that USF at the very least should acknowledge it. At the very least, like you said, a retweet of the list, a retweet of the AAC account was tweeting it, or saying it in a way that says like, great job in that green and gold that you played in for the last 2 years. Excited for you to be in the new green and gold here in Tampa. Whatever it needs to be, acknowledge it because it is a big deal. This isn't every day. There's 35 guys on the list. That means there's 100 schools that don't get mentioned at all in these types of situations. So it's something. It is, as you and Seth and Colin have ever so eloquently put, this is an alley-oop for USF to do, and they decided not to go for it. They let it hit off the back rim and come back down to them.
They grabbed the alley-oop and then ran out to half court to try to shoot.
Right.
It was a real J.R. Smith moment.
Basically. But I also want to say, in fairness to the decision behind it, Gary hasn't taken a snap here at USF. His recognition on the Davey O'Brien watch list is not conducive to what he has done in Tampa, USF. He's merely selected USF as his destination to finish out his football career. It's from his work that he did at Baylor. And whether that translates over to the work that he does at USF, great. I'm sure they'll call for it. And I'm sure eventually when he gets added to the USF roster, because he's still not there, it'll be mentioned there. I think it can coexist that USF should have said something, but we also shouldn't be making a really, really, really big deal about this to the point where people are just consistently adding USF football saying, like, why didn't you post this? Why didn't you post this? Why didn't you post this? They have a reason why they didn't post it. We don't know what it is, but they decided as a staff, as an organization, like if Jeff Scott really wanted to post it or if Jeff Scott really didn't want to post it, he can make that happen either way. He chose to have it not get posted. So
I think the disconnect is that, like, you have posts from weeks ago about, guys making the Phil Steele fourth team
honorable mention.
Yeah, like it's not like there's nothing, right?
Right.
Like, so you have a tweet about that, which that's cool, but Davey O'Brien's pretty prestigious. I mean, go down the list of names of guys that have won that. It's pretty crazy. So just even though the watch list, I don't know if they stick to it totally, like they can't go outside the watch list, but it's still a pretty big deal to be on it. And how many times has the USF quarterback been on the watch list?
It's been 4 years, right? 5 years, technically.
But how many times total? Has this been like the third or fourth time, probably?
Possibly the second.
Yeah. So it's a big deal. But I think there is something to, like, they're going to have a competition. So they don't want anybody to transfer. So we're not naming a starter in summer before. But once that first day of practice rolls around and people are locked in, then maybe you go a little bit more into it.
But here's the thing that maybe I think here's the true disconnect is it's not like the list was secret. It's not like they handed it out to the other schools and were like, okay, this is the list, don't let it out. They literally broadcast it so everybody knows. Like Timmy McClain knows that Gary's on the list. Travis Marsh knows that Gary's on the list. Byron Brown knows that Gary's on the list, on and on and on. So is it really a secret? No. If that's what hurts your feelings, then man, you're in the wrong business. I don't know what to tell you. Like something good, legitimately something good happened to a team that was 2-10 last year. To not promote your team.
You're back.
No, you're good, Nate. You're back.
You froze for a second.
Oh, I mean, I was talking. It sounded like Steve froze. But like, this is really the hill that you want to die on? That you're not going to promote this when you were coming off a 2-10 season where nothing went right. The opening week of the season, you get bombed by NC State, and the Big 12 news comes out, and then you're just kind of reeling from that the rest of the year. So it doesn't make it. The rhyme and reason of it just doesn't make any sense. And it's not like he's not enrolled, because he is. And it's not like he's been not working out with the team, because he has. It's not like
at the top of the grit score rankings.
Right.
He's been at top, like him and Byron Brown are consistently showing up every week on this grit score, which I find interesting. So I don't know. To me, it is kind of weird, but I do understand the side of it of, hey, this is like a battle. It also doesn't do him any favors if you do think it really is a battle that he could possibly lose, to go out and tout how how he's on this watch list and then he doesn't start. That would probably be pretty tough too.
That's my thinking about this, is that this isn't necessarily, this is basically protecting all egos involved. And really the only people that are hurt from it are the USF fans that are going to carry this bucket for way too long. Like we're 32 hours past when it was announced, right? Everyone should have gone to bed last night and woke up today and it's a new day. This is really not that big of a deal. You get the frustrations around social media and the usage that it's had this summer. Again, Nate kind of alluded to it, vacations and time off and everything like that. The staff is also a little bit shorter hand than I think what they would normally have. So, I don't want to make excuses for them. Again, I think at the very least you acknowledge this and say some variety, but they're clearly not going to acknowledge it, so we can put it to bed.
Yeah. You don't have to build a media campaign around it, but I do think, just like a retweet of it and saying, hey, this is cool. Or, I mean, even if it was just like that, hey, isn't this neat?
I said that. Yeah. I was like, neat, exclamation point. That's all I got to say. Just acknowledge the fact that it's there.
Just an acknowledgement of it, I think,
to protect the egos of quarterbacks. And Seth, it firsthand, quarterback ego is the most fragile thing in the world. No, I mean, it's egg on everyone's face if Gary goes out, doesn't win the job, or Gary goes out and does win the job. It's egos getting hurt and everything like that. And knowing what the situation was when he announced that he was coming here, it's clear that the staff is on eggshells a little bit with Gary coming to campus and having 5 quarterbacks. Yeah.
And you don't want to, and if you do feel like you're really, okay, we are going to have a real true competition, you don't want to have any hints of favoritism as well, where a guy might think, oh yeah, well, he's only here, we're close, but he's got that, he's on that watch list, so you guys are just trying to, get publicity, I think from that, on the field standpoint, I think it makes sense. In terms of like generating positive interest in your program, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's something really cool. Just acknowledge it and say, hey, isn't this cool? Like, was there a Central Florida quarterback on that list?
No.
Right? I mean, it's pretty neat to have a guy that's on there. I think I guess Van Dyke was probably on it, right, from Miami. But so, like, Anthony Richardson wasn't on it. So only 2 quarterbacks in the state of Florida. Only 2 quarterbacks in the state of Florida made it on there. So that's pretty neat.
3 quarterbacks from the conference. I'm confident that if USF or Gary Bohannon started in whatever timeline of all this happening, if Gary Bohannon was the quarterback last year and was on this list after a stellar season last year or whatever, they'd make a tweet about him, but they're clearly just not going to, and it needs to be put to bed. It's okay. Like we're not the ones that are making the calls and the shots in the background and everything like that. The staff decided, support staff and football staff decided we're going to keep everything even keeled. You've got 5 quarterbacks. You've got a junior going into their junior year. You have a junior committed at quarterback. So, you're clearly looking for a guy to lead the program and be QB1. USF football account hasn't even really acknowledged that Gary transferred here. That's how much they're on eggshells. The only times that USF football, the official USF football Twitter account, has acknowledged that Gary exists is when they retweet AJ Artis's grit rankings every week. There's no commitment post there. If they talked about they retweeted the coaches whenever it happened, the gifts and everything that they're posting and their excitement. Not once was Gary Bohannon mentioned by name. So, they're keeping a competition open. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Again, it's just one of those things that's like, would it be nice? Yeah. Does it seem like it's easy? Yeah, but there are also some reasons for them possibly not doing it that are not just like, hey, we're lazy. There are some reasons, but I still think they should have done something, but it doesn't really matter that much. All right. So now let's go on to our buddy from the ACC, Jim Phillips, spoke today. And he had a time. They started their media days. He spoke and kind of gave a really long opening statement to kind of limit the amount of questions. And after seeing him answer questions, you kind of see why. But he's had some interesting things to say, didn't he, Steve?
Yeah. He has the elegance of like a crocodile off of a high dive. Like, my goodness gracious, his opening statement, in fairness, was what, like 27 and a half minutes? Like, he was really up there. And poor Brett McMurphy is just sitting there like, God, just shut up so I can ask you a realignment question.
Yeah. So here was one of the quotes that kind of sparked the old Freudian slip, some may say. He says, I know where our 17 or our 15 schools are. We're really aligned to find resolutions to that revenue gap. So 15, I believe, includes Notre Dame, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So 17, right? So, and they talked about looking at every possible avenue, looking at bringing teams in, looking at changing how they offer revenue. That's would be interesting is if they do, let's say they bring USF in, are they going to give them a full share of revenue?
I think that's something that needs to be addressed across football in itself. It is an interesting tidbit that I think is probably going to have bigger ramifications on college football conferences, aside from USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Like, the revenue share is kind of the thing that is the glue, is the caulk, is the states that are being conferences together for the most part, because realistically, you look at the quote unquote bottom feeders of conferences, they're kind of coattailing along for the ride. And so if you start breaking up the revenue and saying, okay, Boston College, we're not going to pay you as much as Clemson, then what's going to do to what's that going to do to Boston College? What is that going to do to Clemson's revenue? And then how is that going to affect their viewpoint on staying within said conference? So, an interesting tidbit. I don't think that there's going to be much. I mean, we probably won't see much room of any of that changing anytime soon. But God, don't ask me why he's not on the roster. I'm gonna throw my keyword. But yeah, I think it's an interesting prospect, and one that these conferences are going to have to address at some point, because you do have unrest amongst the top of the non-Power 2, where they're saying like, okay, I'm Florida State, I'm UNC, I'm Miami. Why am I not making as much, or why am I making just the same as Syracuse? I'm the big brand in the conference. The egos are going to get there. The SEC is going to figure at some point we could cut dead weight and make more money for the rest of the schools.
And that's one of the things Jim Phillips said. He's basically, to me, it seemed like he was saying, like, we'll kind of do whatever we can to get everyone to stick. It seems to me like we might be moving to a world where there's just 4 16 teams, or everybody, we try to get to 16 teams, and then even 4 or 5, and then that's how the automatic qualifiers are decided from those 5 groups of 16, the champions, and then you go at larges after that for the playoff. But it did certainly seem like they were open to expansion, and I know that there is a definite fervor and thought down here that USF would be quite the expansion candidate for the ACC. So that was kind of an interesting tidbit on realignment. He also mentioned how important He also mentioned how important, that every school if they're going to bring in outside schools, they have to bring value, And athletic and revenue value was one piece of the pie, which if you're looking at, I know TV market is not the number one thing, but USF's done pretty well, has a big TV market, and has done well on TV comparatively to other schools across the country, especially for their success. Athletic success was one part, but he's like, or academic success, being an AAU school or a high research institution. So he kind of made it seem like you need to at least bring one of the three. Right. USF would probably fit two of the three. And then if you're looking outside of kind of the revenue sports, they've been pretty good in most of those.
Right. I would almost argue that they bring something to the table on all three metrics. Football is going to be king, and football is going to be the driver of the bus.
The problem is it's such a good men's basketball conference too, and that's if one of those was really good, you'd feel really good about it. But
and it might not take much to turn around the basketball program. I mean, they are getting a little bit more recognition than I think is warranted. I know, Robert, I was fucking with you, but it's interesting to kind of logistically think about it, because I know everyone wants to tout like football record and basketball record and everything like that. Like, you still have to kind of keep every aspect of the university in mind when you do look at realignment, and it gets lost in the shuffle every single time. Yes, the athletic side of the things are very important, but the people that are having those conversations about realignment are school presidents.
Yeah.
And people that are not really involved with athletics as much as writing the check and being there for the strategic plan. So, in theory, there's a reason why this school is now having this newfound resurgence of investment within itself that I think, and not just athletics, the athletics district and the on-campus stadium and the indoor practice facility and all the facility enhancements are fantastic. But that's a piece of the overall facilities enhancements that USF is doing across the USF Tampa campus, the USF St. Pete campus, and the USF Manatee campus. This isn't just the pretty renderings of whatever's going on, but there's more to this than that. And getting to AAU headers or getting as close as they possibly can, there's a lot of really good stuff there. And I think it's something that is enticing for a conference that really looks at a well-rounded university rather than someone that's just caught fire for a couple football seasons and want to add them, to the brink.
Yeah, I think if you look at all the things that are happening, I think the academic side of the school is definitely emerging. I feel like it's kind of, even since I was in school, it feels like it's taken off quite a bit. And then, the obvious potential on the athletic side when you're talking about building an on-campus stadium and things like that, and just the location. My only question is, like, why would Florida State and Miami be okay with it? I guess if it's just like hey, we're going to get to 16, we're going to consolidate. We're going to own basically the two of the three biggest markets in the state of Florida. But that would seem to be the one thing to me that, and because I believe you've wrestled, it's not a replacement for Florida State and Miami. What you've heard kind of in the background is that it would be an addition to, right? That's the only thing that I can't really wrap my head around, but there seems to be some momentum there. So, and his comments did nothing to slow that down.
No, not even a little bit. Actually, kind of made it worse. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if you look around around the AAC, you look around, the college football scape in itself, there's a lot. Like, why would a few years ago, why would Texas and Texas Tech be okay with adding TCU and Baylor? Why were they okay with adding TCU? The big Dallas market kind of set up in Fort Worth there. There's potential. There's a lot of stuff happening there.
They just made the Rose Bowl too. And
that too.
So they had some on-field success for
Right.
Now, it was only I don't believe they were great in a bunch of sports, though. I'll have to ask our
Right.
guy
And
Parker
they were
about it. But football, they were pretty good. But basketball, like their basketball team has gotten better, I think, since they've gone to the Big 12.
right. And so it's one of those things that kind of a rising tide will lift all boats. And we've talked about that before. The football team turns around, you're going to see just explosiveness out of the non-revenue sports, just because all of it gets elevated at that time.
That's where a lot of revenue comes from too.
Yeah, and it facility enhancements help all really, and it comes down to it. If the AACC decides we're going to add 2 more schools, it's USF and Memphis. I don't know. I'm just tossing a name out there. Then it's not going to take away from what Florida State and Miami are doing. In fact, it might make things a little bit easier for them, because now instead of, everyone recruits from the Tampa Bay area in itself, and most of these schools have a dedicated, Tampa recruiter in itself. But now you're getting more eyeballs on your program. Now
it may hurt Florida more than those two.
I think it hurts Florida
because Florida recruits down in Tampa a ton.
I think if anything, and again, I'm going to put myself in the footsteps of Jim Phillips here, and give a bunch of 40 slips. But realistically, if you really want to corner the Florida market, you tell Florida State and Miami, we're adding USF, the biggest market in the state of Florida, basically outside of Jacksonville, which is already dominated by Florida. You basically lock up everything outside of Gainesville, or really outside of Orlando to Gainesville to Jacksonville. You dominate the rest of the state at that point. You're owning 75% of the market at that point. Why not? Like,
you get North Florida, South Florida, and left Florida.
Yeah. University of left Florida.
All right. So I think there's definitely some smoke there. And there seems like, I would guess they'd expand if they can get, my guess, there was talk also, we're kind of going long here on expansion, but there was talk about Notre Dame teaming up with another conference to give some inventory to NBC throughout the whole day, not just the Notre Dame, but give them like a noon game and a night game all day. So they'd have basically all day of and trying to, in the Big 12, there's talk with the Big 12. But I wonder if that's something the ACC can get worked out with them, since they do seem pretty amenable to letting Notre Dame keep, their independent status. But they could let them stay independent and then just kind of team up with them on a TV deal. And you basically get you're adding Notre Dame to the conference a little bit.
Right.
And then you kind of get that boost there for the per team revenue, which I think that's what they're trying to figure out. How can we boost that revenue per team? Because that's the other part of it. They could have more money coming in on their next TV deal, but if they bring in 2 more teams, now does our per school money go down? Now that's when you get into, well, Clemson's like, well, I want this every year, no matter what, and then that's when you kind of get into the switch in there.
Yeah.
Anything else on realignment before we move on to some kind of sadder news?
Evidently, at the end of the day, and I'm going to reiterate this till the day I die, is that all realignment talk is behind closed doors, done behind the disclosure of non-disclosure agreements and everything like that. Of course, we have where we're seeing the smokes and everything like that, and we'll follow the breadcrumbs that are left behind. But it's slow, it's painful. There's a lot of rumors. There's a lot of people throwing shit wall to see if it sticks, and then saying, "Haha, yes, I was right. This thing happened."
This stuff usually doesn't come out until it's about a day from being done. If you think about the Texas and Oklahoma, once that leaked out, it was done within the week, I think, maybe within even sooner. Once the USC, UCLA stuff leaked out legitimately, it was done within a day, I believe.
Right.
So this stuff usually does not leak, like Steeg said, with NDAs and stuff like that. It's not coming out until it's imminent. So you may not see anything for a while, but that doesn't mean nothing's happening.
As a general rule of thumb, the closer you get to the end of a month, is when it's most likely going to be leaked out. I'll leave it at that.
All right, let's move on to some more sad news. Our good buddy Smoke had to retire for medical reasons. Had a neck injury, I believe. It's not safe for him to continue playing football. Do you have any idea when this was sustained?
I have no clue.
I don't either.
Yeah. Frankly, it coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, the timing of
he
it.
never really spent time on injury lists or anything like that, aside from like a hamstring issue last year. But completely out of nowhere. No idea where this guy came from.
And he was a guy that played super hard. Always played hard. Always was flying around like 100 miles an hour. He had no lower gear. So, guys that play like that, sometimes they get hurt. But like you said, I don't remember him being hurt during the season. I'm trying to go back and remember if he played in the spring game. They had some older guys not play, and that wasn't really out of the ordinary. I can't remember if he played or not, but it does seem to kind of come out of nowhere. But this is definitely a guy that gave his all, I think, for the school. Played very hard all the time. What is your favorite Smoke Davis memory?
Oh God, it's the simplest thing. He literally exploded on the scene for USF as a true freshman. Way back when. God, I have to remind myself that this happened, but the USF UMass game up in Amherst a couple of years ago, where he absolutely rocked the shit out of 2 straight kickoff returners, basically murdered a man straight in cold blood. Luckily with Smoke came from Lee High School up in Jacksonville, and so I was kind of familiar with what his work ethic was coming from Lee High School. Just hits the shit out of people, and came onto the scene and did that, and was kind of the perennial when Jeff Scott got hired and needed to revamp the defense a little bit. He kind of slotted into that star hybrid linebacker and safe goal that for the USF faithful kind of reminded everyone of that Jamie Bird, Angry Bird, position, where a guy that can cover, a guy that can get to the flat, cover deep balls if needed. But if a poor slot receiver was running an out route, you knew that they were going to take that. Your star player, your star position player could just take their head off, basically. So, he's the guy that gave 110% for USF every single down, special teams, defense, kickoff return, punt return, whatever it was. He loved to hit. He loved to make contact and everything. So it's a major loss, and it's a major loss for the heart of the program. But I'm glad to see that he's probably going to still be sticking around, probably still be on the sidelines and represent and hype everyone up, because he was good at hyping up the crowd.
Yeah, I remember, I just remember from just thinking back, a guy first of all, if there's been a pretty big hit late on the perimeter the last couple of years, it was probably him, right? Mm-hmm. He's a guy that was always coming downhill 100 miles an hour, and making plays and making big hits. Like you said, energetic guy, seemed to play with a lot of energy. I'm sure his teammates loved him. Jeff Scott said he's going to graduate next month, I believe. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. It seems like you said he's going to stay around the program. And he's definitely a guy that, he seems to be kind of a charismatic, energetic guy that can help and maybe get into coaching or something and kind of keep his course with football going. But he can probably do a lot of things. Like I said, he's about to graduate. So hopefully he can stay around the team and kind of keep the brotherhood there, because that's always tough to kind of lose football, then lose that at the same time. So hopefully he stays around, but he seems to be taking it in stride as much as you can. Seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and kind of going to be doing good things in life, just not playing football anymore. Because
right.
Like we say, like we got here, don't want to really mess around with the neck injuries, right? It's not really worth it. So, some sad news there.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's to go on to the football side of things. It's the next man up time. They took a few DBs this transfer class. There's some young guys waiting in the wing, so it's time for someone else, someone younger, to kind of get into that role. And I know for damn certain that Smoke's gonna be coaching that person up, whoever it is, and getting them ready for whatever Shoop has in store for our defense, because he was a guy that I think I had mentioned when they kept on talking about like the Elite 1,000 and guys that can be drafted and everything like that. I kept on throwing his name because he's in the perfect position, like Buda Baker kind of guy, size wise, speed wise, that can kind of make those type of plays. So it's unfortunate, but it's they'll find someone to kind of replace him there. I believe that they have Gabe Neely there as a safety. I think they might have him listed as a defensive back just in general, though, but I'm pretty sure he was recruited as a safety. So he's a guy that can slot into that role. Amaris Brown, transfer from Kansas State, kind of a similar size and length and everything. So there's options there. There's not a lot of experienced options. I think the only guy with experience from that position is Jaden Curry. So it'll probably be a fresh face there. You could also, realistically, throw a guy like Matt Hill in that position.
I was thinking maybe his experience last year, or you could move Will Jones there or something. Luckily, 2 years ago, this would have been devastating on the field. Yep. I mean, it's devastating, I'm sure, in the locker room and everything. But 2 years ago, this would have crushed them for the season. Their depth was not there. Now they're at a point where they do have some depth. They can absorb a loss. Obviously, not going to be as good, but you have some depth there at least. So, Steeg, final thing on the docket tonight is there were some boxes delivered this past week.
They partook in Amazon Prime Day. Those packages finally arrived.
So we had this message from USF Football. So do you mean these boxes? And these are some boxes that were delivered. You're the equipment guy. What are you thinking here?
Well, there's a few options of what this is. For the people that are able to zoom in on their phones, you can read the label on that closest box that says that it's a helmet. So
helmet.
Yeah, if you really want to get close to the screen so that we can, digest the pores and everything. But yeah, so I mean, in fairness, you can also fucking read the giant label on the box that says "shut."
Yes, which is they're not uniform makers, I don't believe. Yeah,
we're doing math here, but the astuteness of.
But wait, there's more.
But wait. Those two boxes on top are what is interesting the most to me.
What about these boxes?
Those are also very interesting to me for two reasons. I'll start with the tops of the boxes from the previous image, and I'll dampen the mood a little bit. At least those top boxes are screws and face masks and like the chin straps and everything like that. Because when helmets are shipped, they're not shipped complete. With like I have one right behind me as a perfect example.
Oh, look at that!
I can use this. So when the helmet's shipped,
does it fit?
Yeah, it actually does. Hold on, I gotta take my headset.
There we go. Look at that. Imagine that coming at you in a hole. Oh, you don't know what to do.
All right, am I back?
Yes.
Fuck.
No, you're back. Steeg's gone. All right, Steeg is gone. Any questions in the chat? I see a few. You got the Adidas custom, could be uniforms. We've seen a couple uniforms roll out from Adidas schools in the last few days. I think Georgia Tech had one. That was a beautiful helmet, right? I think Georgia Tech had one. FIU had one. Oh my gosh, he's back. Steeg is back.
Sorry, I forgot
right.
whenever the my headset disconnects, I have to leave and come back. But yeah, so when it's shipped, it's just the shell. The face mask isn't usually included. It usually has to be reinstalled onto it. That's for the safety purposes of not cracking the helmet and also cut down shipping boxes. So realistically, when you take the bladder out and everything like that, you can stack them all in there and ship basically all of the helmets at the same time, and then all the pieces that go along with it in separate boxes. So that, I'm pretty sure, is what was in
The whole first
image.
shipment was basically helmet stuff, is what your assertion is, right?
Yeah, in my professional opinion, take that for what you will.
Steeg knows his equipment. Let me tell you, you saw him in that helmet.
Know my shit.
Yeah.
But to the point that you were making, Georgia Tech unveiled their. Were those primaries or were those alternates?
I know they wear white at home sometimes, so
Yeah.
I thought there were primary uniforms. The terrible internet naughty.
Yeah, it wasn't internet. It was my headset because of like fucking 3.
Listen, Steeg had to dip into the props. All right, when you dip into the props, sometimes you gotta cut out and come back. That's all right.
Right.
So yeah,
but
FIU got new uniforms. Georgia Tech unveiled new uniforms recently, and then there's been some rumors going around about uniforms, and you have these boxes arrive for USF equipment. They found some drip too. So
yep. And in my first pass through, I was like, oh, those are shoe boxes. But then I deduced and looked in the background, and those are the same shut boxes. It looks like. Mm-hmm. So these are big boxes here, and usually big boxes mean there's a lot of shit packed in there.
You talking about like with all the yellow there? You might have some yellow.
Yeah.
Yellow on here. Elementary, dear Steeg, right?
I like the look.
So what do you think? What do you think on uniforms? Have you heard anything from your well-placed sources, or do you think we're going? Georgia Tech seemed to be simplified. FIU seemed to be simplified. That seems to be a modern design element. You're seeing it in the NBA where people are using just like simple fonts and big lettering.
Yep.
So we're kind of getting away from the really crazy designs, it seems like.
Right. And this should be of no surprise to anyone who has followed uniforming in the last couple of years, is when a college sports manufacturer makes something for a certain school, they usually make them in the different colors for the other schools.
Yeah, just
if
one
you go
template,
through Nike's,
right?
Yeah, they basically template this shit out. You go on Nike's website, you can get, and I remember seeing this because I thought it was the funniest fucking thing. For the NCAA tournament, they had all the NCAA tournament kind of things, and it was like Next Man Up or something like that was their thing. It was literally the same exact thing, Next Man Up, but it was the UCF logo or the Houston logo or whoever it was. It was the same fucking thing over and over and over again for all the Nike schools. So lo and behold, if you want to kind of take a sneak peek at what USF's uniforms could be this year, look around at other Adidas schools and what they're doing, because it's generally going to follow the same line.
Here's Georgia Tech, a little look at them, what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Kind of going back to their roots is what they said. So kind of going back to a more simplified look there. We'll pull up FIU here.
Yeah.
I mean, it very well they may just take the navy out of the Georgia Tech uniforms and slap some green on it and call it a day.
Might. And so it's going to be kind of a I don't want to call it a disappointment, because I think new jerseys are always exciting. It's exciting for the players, it's exciting for the fans and everything like that. But I want to get the hopes up of like some innovative top tier special uniform that's specifically designed for USF. It might have a USF specific flair to it, because contractually most of these uniform manufacturers are told to do that. But like FIU, they put like the panther eyes on the shoulder pads.
Here's look
which
at FIU's.
I think it kind of looks like shit.
I think
really,
outside of that, it looks all right.
These blue ones look good. I like these. I don't like the whites.
I think they have the kind of they have the eyes still there, but they're in black, so it's harder to see. Mm-hmm. But again, it's pretty simple. I think the one thing that is interesting between the two is the different number styles, not just kind of the font, which is his New Jersey numbers, but this one looks a little bit more. The other one looks like it's like the crinkle screen press look or whatever, and this looks more, sewed on to speak.
Yeah, and I think they're probably going away from the foil print that's just like by itself. I think it's probably going to be that textured, layered screen print to get those numbers on and everything. So I'd imagine, knowing how this offseason is, it's going to piss off half the people. The other half of the people are going to think it's fine.
I think it would be interesting. I'm surprised that they're not going to go. Now, I think they could. This is something you might save for when you move into the new building, but kind of really go back. Now, it could have been something they did last year. Kind of go back and kind of a more simplified, like earlier look from the program. Nothing too crazy, nothing too, out there, but you got great colors. You got good logos, mix them up.
Yeah.
Don't go nuts. You should have a pretty good uniform with all the elements you have here, right?
It's classic. You got to have the right, people in place to make those new uniforms and everything. I will say, if the same people are involved that were involved with the spring and winter uniforms, I feel like we're in probably good hands. I love our soccer uniforms. Adidas makes great soccer uniforms. I love our basketball uniforms. I think they're fantastic, and I think the alternates are good as well. And then looking at baseball and softball, they did a tremendous job there as well. Good job keeping it classic, but also adding a little bit of modern flair to it. I'm more curious, more than anything, of what the helmets are going to look like. I would like to see a return at least a little bit to green helmets. As much as that matte black helmet looks fantastic, I'd like to see two helmets, a white one and a green one.
You're not a gold man.
I think if you're going to do throwback uniform, do gold. Do gold helmets. Do that. Bring back those ugly fucking mustard gold uniforms or helmets if we're going to do something like that. But yeah, I think gold and chrome have kind of the gold and chrome helmet itself, not the logo. I think those have kind of overstayed their welcome throughout the uniform popularity side. Yeah. It's time to move past that. Matt's in, speckled, dust is in, stuff like that.
I went back and watched. I went back and watched the 2011 Notre Dame game with the guy that writes for Douglas Farmer. He writes for NBC Sports for Notre Dame. Went back and watched the game with him on my YouTube channel, Varnadore Films. Like and subscribe. Mm-hmm. The green helmets were great. They were distinctive, I thought, and I thought that uniform was awesome that they wore at Notre Dame that day.
Yeah. And so I think if you can incorporate that.
Yeah, I do like the green. I'm with you. I do like the gold too. I'm a sucker.
And so I'll leave this uniform opinion in the works. Keep slime. Stop wearing slime for War on I-4. Let them wear it whenever they want because they look really good. It's really eye-catching and it's really fun. But please, for the love of God, stop wearing it for War on I-4. Don't make it a War on I-4 special. Don't make it make like a Sunday slime for baseball or softball or whatever. Like in football, wear slime for I don't know,
Tulane,
homecoming,
right? The Green Wave.
or Tulane, right?
Slime
Like
wave?
something. Yeah. Don't wear it for 1I4. Just classic works for rivalry games. We don't need they stopped doing special uniforms for the War on I4. We need to stop doing special uniforms for the War on I4. Just
This might be the last one for a while, so go out classic.
Might
right?
be. It will be. It's 6 years before they can schedule it.
Oh, shucks. All right. Any questions in the chat before we're done? I think we've gone pretty long here, even without old Nathan. Any questions?
Yeah,
we have some participation this week.
I see Eric asked, "Do we keep South Florida? Does it go to USF?"
It seems like Adidas's move is putting a logo on top, so I bet you get the U right there on top of the kind of under the collar there.
Yeah,
It seems to be their move for the template.
And it looks like, based off of the branding that they've done on the new USF website, which, by the way, the entire team, social media team, was working on the new website, which the new website is just absolutely fantastic. It looks like the main branding is using iconic U. So imagine that it's going to be USF, not South Florida. Those kind of go synonymous together.
Was that a Charlie Strong decision
to do USF instead of South Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only good thing he ever did for this university.
Let's see.
Well, that's the logo, the Merrill Lynch logo. But yeah, it look. If I had to guess, they're probably going to do the iconic U on like the chest here. But
hey, you guys want to see the new page real quick?
Look at how pretty that is.
Oh yeah, Chad Morris.
Oh yeah,
we've had so much stuff happen. We forgot about Chad Morris.
I
think Chad Morris failed because he was poor at putting rosters together and not a great recruiter. He will not be doing either of those things here. He will be just breaking down offense, helping them game plan. He was pretty good at that. So I think there's some flack for the hire because he didn't have success at Arkansas and was somewhat successful at SMU, but the issues were, talent. Just Sam Pittman's a much better recruiter than Chad Morris.
Right.
And has put together a better, I think, coaching staff around him. Chad Morris doesn't have to put together a coaching staff here. He doesn't have to recruit. He gets to focus on offense. And if you go back and look, Clemson is Clemson because of Chad Morris. They fired Billy Napier, which is an interesting wrinkle, and hired Chad Morris, and he brought their offense to kind of he took them to the next level. He ran the quarterback quite a bit early with Taj Boyd, so you may see some of that maybe if he has any influence. But I think it's a good hire. This is a guy that's not going to be on the field. He's going to be helping you game plan. There's nothing to lose with a guy like that, and probably a good amount to gain. Jeff Scott coached under him. He understands what kind of coach he is. I'd say it's a pretty good hire.
Right. And I don't think that there's anything to lose sleep over, and I don't think there's anything to write home about either. The cycle of it's a big name, and I think I mentioned this to someone. If it wasn't Chad Morris, you probably wouldn't hear about this.
They hired another offensive analyst today that, unless you're a local guy, because he's a local guy, nobody really talked about it.
Right. And honestly, the other guy that they just hired is a more important name that was hired. Like Chad Morris is probably like a one and done kind of guy. He'll use this season. Hopefully, it's a good one. Fix his mojo, and then go be the QB coach at, like, I don't know, Auburn or some shit like that, or some SEC school that's just going to hire him on a whim. But the other guy that they just hired is like a Lakeland guy, full in through and through. Yeah, like a guy that you want on staff to be a grad assistant to help with recruiting.
This is a pure scheme Yeah, that's like a relationship hire. This is a pure scheme behind the scenes, cutting up film, looking at stuff. The guy was a good offensive play caller at Clemson. I'm sure he can handle. I'm sure he can add something to. Will he be in the Joe Canaan role? I don't know. I think Joe Canaan was pretty involved. I don't know how involved he'll be, but I know his opinion carries weight with Jeff Scott, I'd imagine. Because Jeff Scott kind of came after him and ran something similar. Him and Tony Elliott did after he left for SMU. So Jeff Scott obviously has respect for him. He's hired a couple of his former coaches. I think DePrado was on his staff. Tremaine Carroll was the name, right? The former strength coach was on his
Coach
staff.
True. Yep.
So he obviously values his opinion and his ability to, his kind of football acumen. So I think he'll be of some importance. But again, he's not on the field. He's not recruiting. So I think you do minimize his weaknesses, which seem to be recruiting, managing the team as the head coach. As a coordinator, he was great. So this is kind of like you're a coordinator and you don't have to worry about any recruiting is basically what an analyst is. All you're doing is just watching film, which I'm sure he'll excel at.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, if anything, you can read into it as Jeff Scott's a relationship guy because he hired his old mentor. I mean, I'm sure there's 45 other offensive analysts that he could have hired, but he went with the relationship guy.
And you know what? It very well could end up happening. Our Coach Trickett has a great couple years, gets a job somewhere else, and then you slide in a guy like Chad Moore. It also helps kind of in that sense where maybe at this point he's probably got some good buyout money. Chad Moore, he coached high school football last year, so it's not about a level, right? It's probably about the opportunity. So he may be a guy that I'll be the analyst for a couple of years, and if somebody on staff leaves, I can slide in and you don't miss a beat, and you have a quality. This is what the big programs do. They have kind of tiers on their coaching staff, and when a guy leaves, you can slide somebody else in without missing a beat. So I don't get the controversy.
His former players at Arkansas, the 2-10, 0-8 season from Arkansas, said nothing but glowing things about him at SEC Media Days this year. I think Joey Knight and Matt Baker were there. Yeah. And they asked him about, asked these players who were on that same team about Chad Morris. And, he was there for 2 seasons?
Yes.
Yeah, they could easily just, throw his name under the bus. There's, nothing holding him back or anything like that. And most players are pretty fruitful and pretty honest. And most of them are pretty honest that, hey, the time didn't work out. We didn't win that many games or anything like that, but he's a great guy. He's a great offensive mind. He's got a lot of good on his shoulders and everything. So, again, I'm not going to lose sleep over us hiring Chad Morris as an offensive analyst because I don't remember who offensive analysts are after the season anyways.
Yeah, I think there's really no risk. It's not like he's calling plays. It's not like he's recruiting or managing the team. He's here to provide analysis that just kind of accentuates what the other coaches are doing. And I think he'll do really well there. And then he also provides some depth on your coaching staff if somebody were to leave.
Right.
So I like it.
All right.
Anything else? I think we've gone over an hour now. Any final words here?
Buy season tickets, donate to Bulls Club.
Do you still have a link?
No, but Vito will provide it in the thing because he's so good at that. Bulls block parties on the 20th. Use Steeg 5 if you're to go. Support the school. They deserve it. They're working their asses off for it right now. We'll see what happens during football season. We'll see what happens during basketball season. That's all he can really do at this point.
Yeah. So, we'll kind of be back depending on how news is. I know Media Day is coming up soon. I believe it's next week, right? So we may be back after Media Day. If not, we'll be back the following week, I'm sure, with plenty to discuss. Thanks for tuning in. Pour one out for Nathan's internet. We'll get it figured out here. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.